Last month, I took a long break and went on vacation. I'm a sporty guy who loves adventure, especially scuba diving. I booked a trip to a quiet island that seemed like the perfect way to start over. I hadn't had a real vacation in years. There was only me, the waves, and silence. The clouds were low and heavy on the morning of the dive, but the weather reports said they would clear up by noon. I wasn't too worried, as it wasn't my first time. When I told the man at the dive shop I was going alone, he raised an eyebrow, but I didn't care. I thought I knew what I was up to. The currents had gotten stronger by the time I got 15 meters down. The water, which had been clear blue, was now cloudy. I hovered for a moment, trying to figure out where I was, but the pressure changed, and the waves above pulled harder than usual. My stomach turned, and I realized I needed to get out of the water. The world underwent a transformation as I broke through the ocean's surface. The sky above me was covered in thick, boiling clouds, and the wind was howling already. The raindrops hit my face like needles. I had no idea that the storm would come so quickly. I was experienced enough to know that the boat that was supposed to pick me up had already left and gone back to the marina. Taking a quick look around, I figured out I wasn't far from shore, but the beach I had come up on was a quiet stretch I didn't know. As I swam to shore, the waves hit me. I crawled up onto the wet beach, sand grinding between my teeth. I was standing in a circle, soaking wet. There were no humans in that area, just the jungles and jagged cliffs, and at some distance, a cave. The palm trees and wind-blown shadows half covered the cave, hidden behind a bend in the cliffs. A lightning cracked behind me, numbing my ears, and I ran to the cave. It was cool and dry inside. The storm's noise faded into a low growl as I ran my hand through my wet hair. I just stood at the entry point, catching my breath, and thanking God for this unexpected shelter. The storm grew louder, and I probably spent half an hour just watching the high tides. The water in my dive suit was cold and stuck to my skin. It was getting very boring to wait like that. Hence, I got curious. I turned on the light on my helmet and set out to explore the cave. The cave extended further than I had anticipated, and the walls were covered in moss and weeds. There were strange patterns on the stone. I couldn't tell if they were carvings or just natural phenomena. As I went deeper, the silence became strange. There weren't even sounds of water dripping or birds chirping. The only sound I could hear was my breathing. It seemed like no one had been here in a long time. I was casually looking around when I saw a man sitting on a large rock. My flashlight illuminated him well enough to get a good look from the distance. There was a slight tilt to his head, suggesting that he was either sleeping or meditating. Thinking I'd found some company, I yelled, "Hey!" No answer. I got closer. Are you okay?" I could see his body move. He lifted his head. And in that moment, I felt weird. His face was not right. His lips were cracked and blackened, and his skin was pale. His wide eyes were tired and sunken, yet he smiled at me. He raised his arm and gave a lazy, casual wave before collapsing onto the stone floor. I stopped. There was something very, very wrong. But what if he's sick? What if he needs help? I took a few steps forward. "Dude, are you hurt?" When I got close enough to touch him, his body jerked up like a puppet. He looked at me and started coughing. I can't even explain how horrific it was to watch him like that. He wasn't just coughing air, he was coughing blood. His chest heaved with wheezing coughs, sending more blood flying across the stone floor. This continued for 5 to 10 seconds. Then he stopped and began laughing like a maniac. I stumbled back in fear. There was blood all over his face. His teeth were red. He kept laughing, as if something inside him had broken and made him happy at the same time. That was the last straw for me. I sprinted at full speed, leaving the guy behind me. I turned around one last time, and he was waving at me, sitting on the ground like nothing happened. As I emerged from the cave, the storm struck me with the force of a wall. The rain was pouring down, and the lightning was crashing. but I didn't care. The outside felt safer than the cave in that moment. I ran all the way to the resort, shaking and wet. Since then, I haven't gone scuba diving alone. People say that diving is like flying underwater. The calm weightlessness feeling is like magic. But no one mentions how quickly peace can turn to fear, or how the ocean can decide you're not coming back. We dropped anchor just off the reef, and the morning sun made the water look like glass. I got off the boat last, following the group. I preferred being alone, even underwater. The reef and the slow pull of the sea were all I could see. I leveled off at 18 meters down. The gauge was fine, the air pressure was good, and my breathing was steady. I floated near a jagged coral reef and watched a lionfish move through the water like a ghost. But suddenly, things changed. The change occurred not around me, but within me. The next breath I took tasted wrong. It was more like sucking on a penny wrapped in cotton candy. The taste is akin to that of metal with a sickening sweetness. I blinked, confused, and looked at my gauge again. I couldn't tell any difference. I tapped the valve on the tank, and it was still safe. Suddenly, I experienced nausea. My chest got tight, and it was difficult to take a full breath. I looked around, but I couldn't find my dive buddy anywhere. My vision began to blur, with the edges getting darker. There was something awfully wrong. I tried to stay calm as I reached for my BCD inflator. I remembered the training lesson about how panicking only uses up oxygen, but it felt like my hands were not mine. They felt heavy and numb. My thoughts were all mixed up, slow and sticky. The sea around me warped, with colors that were too bright and edges that were too sharp. Then, I realized I was passing out. I kicked upward and pulled on my buoyancy control device. My ears screamed in protest as I went up too quickly, but I didn't care. I needed to breathe. I had to get out. The world turned black about 6 meters below the surface. The next thing I knew, someone was yelling my name. The dive boat pulled me over its side while I coughed and threw up seawater. It felt like someone inserted razor blades inside my ears. I couldn't hear anything apart from a low, steady ringing. Later, the dive master told me that I must have passed out and floated the rest of the way up. The crew didn't understand how I managed to avoid drowning. They told me I was lucky, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I was being haunted. The doctors said that both eardrums had burst. I would never be able to dive again. It hurt, but not as much as not knowing. There was no unpleasant air for anyone else. There's no problem with the equipment. My tank only has a clean mix of oxygen. Then what went wrong? I couldn't sleep that night. I kept seeing the lionfish, which looked like it was waiting for something. I kept tasting that metallic sugar and hearing the ocean whisper things I couldn't quite make out. That night, I had the most horrible dream ever. In the dreams, I found myself back at a depth of 18 meters. The reef was dead, and had lost all of its color. Fishes were hanging still, looking at me with bulging eyes. Something was moving in the dark, but it was not a shark. It was worse than that. Something with too many arms and mouths. I could feel it watching me, waiting for me. I turned around to swim away, but met my face staring back at me, floating at a distance. The mouth was open and screaming, but no bubbles came up. Gasping for air, I woke up, my lungs burning, and my sweat soaking the sheets. My night terrors got worse, and I was sure something came up from down with me. Even in the daytime, when the taps were off, I could hear water dripping in my apartment. Weeks later, when I finally learned to cope with the trauma, I went back to the boat for one last look. The captain knew who I was, so he recognized me immediately. He gave me a tight smile that offered some comfort. "You were very close to the edge," he said.
What do you mean?
He paused for a second. "There are many stories about the coral reef. Many divers reported seeing things and hearing unusual sounds. People say it's the stress. Perhaps it's the nitrogen narcosis. But some others..." He stopped talking.
Others what?
He finally met my gaze. "They say that when you go too deep into the sea, it takes something from you, and occasionally, it gives you something back." His words sent a chill down my back. I left without saying goodbye. I don't get close to the water anymore, but there are times when I close my eyes and I'm 18 meters down again. I'm tired of reliving that memory deliberately. I really hope that sharing my story will ease my burden and allow me to resume my normal life. Until then, I'm not going close to the ocean, ever again. Hi, I'm Thomas, recently turned 15. I just got back from a family trip to Hawaii. Sounds wonderful, right? But most of it was just my parents relaxing at the resort and drinking wine like their lives depended on it. We had been there for 3 nights, and I was so bored. While Mom and Dad worked on their second or third bottle, I sat on a lounge chair and poked at a plate of pineapple slices. The sky was changing colors with the dying sun, and the private beach below looked like a picture. The calm waves and the afternoon light made me to explore for a little while. I told my parents that I was going to go scuba diving, which was the main reason I agreed to come on this trip. They nodded without thinking, raising their glasses as if that was a sign of good luck. I picked up my stuff and jogged down the path to the beach. The sunlight made the waves look golden. The beach was completely empty. I put on my mask, flippers, and oxygen tank and waded into the warm water. The world changed below. It was quiet and still. Schools of tiny fish moved past me like dancers in sync, and coral reefs reached up to the surface like castles in the water. It was the first time since I got there that I felt calm, like I wasn't just the extra kid on my parents' wine tasting trip. After a while, I floated back to the top and took off my gear. I wanted to relax on the warm sand for a few minutes before going back. I laid down on the sand and took a deep breath. Just when I had started thinking life can be beautiful, I saw someone on the beach. A man was walking towards me. He was fat, bald in the middle, with stringy gray hairs hanging onto the scalp. He wore a bright red Hawaiian shirt, unbuttoned at the top, revealing his hairy chest. His flip-flops gave him a little difficulty walking on the sand, but he managed somehow. He looked at me and waved. Not in the, hey, another beachgoer way. More like, I see you way. I ignored him, but he sat down right next to me, giving me a smile like we were old buddies. You enjoy water sports, huh? Yeah, I said quietly, turning a little away. I used to swim like that when I was your age. His voice was rough and wet, like something bubbling up from deep inside his throat. I nodded in a polite way. He might leave if I didn't say much, I thought. He didn't. Are you here with your family? This big hotel must cost a lot of money. You're lucky. His smile never reached his eyes. They kept looking at me with hidden intentions. Listening to him, I realized he isn't staying at the resort, and that beach is private, as far as I know. But still, I would rather not be rude, so I decided to leave. I should probably go back. He suddenly took hold of my wrist. His sweaty palm made my skin crawl. Oh, leaving already? I was just getting to know you. Yeah, well, I'm not interested in knowing you, so leave my hand. That's when his grip got tighter. Why are you being rude? I'm just trying to be your friend. Let go of me! I yelled and started pulling my arm. His fingers dug in deeper, squeezing like a vice. You kids these days, no manners, not respect. He leaned in closer, still smiling, and his breath was warm and sour on my cheek. Come on, sit with me for a while. I finally freaked out. My heart raced. There was no one around. The building of the resort seemed far away, and he was overpowering me in strength. So I did the only thing I could think of. I bent down, grabbed a handful of sand, and threw it into his face. He screamed while rubbing his eyes desperately. His grip loosened up just enough for me to get away. I sprinted without wasting a single second more. I ran up the stairs, through the palm trees, past the pool, and into the resort lobby. When I saw my parents at the bar, I broke down crying. I was traumatized. My parents immediately called the manager and reported this person. The resort security conducted a thorough search on the beach, but the man had vanished. Then, they checked the guest list, the security cameras, and even the public areas nearby. But no sign of that creep. No one who fits that description has stayed at the resort or even gone through the gates. No one knows how he got in. That night, I didn't sleep very well. I saw his smile every time I shut my eyes. My parents booked us an early flight home the next day. I'm just glad I relied on my instincts before it was too late. So, to the creepy, over-friendly guy, I hope you burn in hell.